Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Power Hour podcast. I'm still not good with that name because I think podcasts are extremely cringe, but I love them. So I'm thinking of a name change to Power Hour Show, but I think we'll stick with podcasts for now. But aside from the point, we've got Sarah Jones here, prominent in the Power Platform scene, a recruiter as well, and recently made a move to a new organization that we'll get into as well. So Sarah, if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself and kind of a role of a recruiter within the tech space, so people kind of know what you're about and kind of what you do.
Yeah, sure. Well, firstly, congratulations on the new podcast.
Oh, thank
I
you.
caught up with Parvez's interview earlier today,
Yeah.
which was brilliant. Great to hear. And thanks for having me as well.
No?
So, yeah, I'm Sarah Jones. I'm a recruiter in the sort of biz app space, Power Platform and Dynamics mostly, 365. I've worked in recruitment for nearly 20 years, but tech recruitment for just over 7 years. And yeah, recently moved to MS Talent, which is a Microsoft specific recruitment agency. So it's quite a nice sort of blend of skills in there now. They're quite a M365 focused team, and I've come in to kind of grow out that biz app space. So yeah, it's been a good start. Recruiter, what do we do? It's different every day, which is sort of what I love about it.
Yeah.
But really kind of, there's a business development aspect to it, bringing in new clients and new roles and keeping the quality of those high as well is something that can be a challenge, but I think is really important to keep good quality companies for our candidates to go and work for.
Hmm.
And the other side is then to look after candidates, qualify the roles that they're applying for and qualifying the candidate to make sure that the skills are a good match. Sometimes that will be a kind of coaching process, as we've just been talking about. It might just be that you're kind of giving some advice and guidance and just starting out a relationship that might then develop into something else along the way. And it's great. What's interesting is when you've been doing this for quite a while, you see things go full circle, like yourself, or someone that may have been a candidate that turns into a hiring manager. So it's really heavily relationship based, and just keeping the quality of your relationships high. What's great fun about being a recruiter in the Power Platform space is the community is just so much fun. So, you're kind of never going to hit a brick wall with what you do. You can be as creative as you want to build new relationships, and that for me means a lot of friendships and a whole different social life
Yeah.
that I didn't have before. And I've got a busy social life already, so it's kind of great that there's some sort of blurry line there between like work and socializing now with the Power Platform and Microsoft community.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, I definitely feel that in terms of the community. And one of the first people I kind of spoke to in the community, the first one was you, which is what Sarah was speaking about a full circle moment when I was making my decision if I wanted to pursue Power Platform. I spoke to Sarah and she encouraged me, maybe not even knowingly encouraging me to kind of push it. And after a few years, here we are in a podcast room, which is quite cool. On the community side of things, because I feel like the Power Platform community really stuck out to me when I was coming in. Even though you've left your company now, Shortlist Recruitment, I've seen obviously a lot of these webinars, these roundtables that you've done, and they're so inspired. And I actually watched you on Griffin's podcast speaking about some of your inspiration behind that. And the fact that you're very good at kind of grouping those people together. So can we understand a little bit more about the inspiration with starting those roundtables, and was it to kind of engage more in that community?
I didn't know anything about the Microsoft community back then.
Yeah.
So it was lockdown. All our clients just shut shop. We all kind of got sent home and no one knew how long this was going to go on for. So by the time I'd spoken to every client, every candidate that I'd dealt with recently, there was nothing really happening, and furlough didn't feel like an option to just sit and wait it out. So I heard on a webinar somewhere someone suggest a round table, and I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. I worked with Blue Prism at the time, who were an RPA vendor, and they had a really good centre of excellence. They were quite good at enablement within their clients. So I asked their team, customer enablement team, to come and do a session with me. So they did. And I spoke with a lot of people around the Northwest, like Manchester University and Together Money, some great companies that were rolling out RPA projects. And often within those organisations, there was just one person that was responsible for that rollout. And so it just was this, there was about 6 of us on the first one, just talking about issues, things that were difficult, things that they'd had success with, and just swapping stories. And then it was really nice because everyone was making new friends during lockdown and everyone was at home. So they kind of grew out over about 6 months around RPA specifically. And then someone called Rupert Windle came on and started talking about Power Automate, and I was like, what's that? And so then we were comparing all these different tools that were available, and then more and more people got involved, and it kind of spread out into the Power Platform, which I didn't know about. And I was working in the dynamic space at the time, but Power Platform wasn't so much talked about, and it all just started unfolding. And then there's this amazing community that really liked talking about stuff, so it just, and Shortlist really supported me with that, and they provided a lot of marketing and things to help outreach with the events, and I made a lot of friends, Parvez being one of them, amongst many others, just through those virtual roundtable events. So they were pretty cool, and Shortlist are still doing VRTs as well. I set up, me and Keith Atherton have been talking about doing something virtually ourselves, non-company related, for about 6 months, maybe 7 months.
Yeah.
But we were just super busy. We had loads of community stuff. We said, let's go to Scottish Summit. We did a session there with Franco about sort of permanent versus contract versus freelance, which was good fun. We really enjoyed it, and we did that as our first session on our new user group called Power Platform Community High Fives. So it's great because I get to still do virtual events and still keep the new speakers flowing through as well, which is something that was always key to the virtual roundtables and will be to the Community High Five user group as well. So does that I don't know, I've gone right off on one then.
No, not at all. No, that explains it absolutely. And honestly, your role in the community is, I can see it through and through LinkedIn, and obviously through the roundtables that you did. And, I still have a task to go through them. There's just so many because, you've worked so hard to bring these people together, which has been amazing. And I'm super excited to be actually speaking at one of the, I think it's the second Community High Five event. Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Yeah. Okay, we'll put the link in the description for that if we've got a link. If not, we'll just put the LinkedIn post or something.
There's a link on, we've got a LinkedIn page. Keith is brilliant at the socials, so we've got Blue Sky and X and all sorts. There's a link tree actually, link on the page, which is probably best because Keith shares everything in those platforms, and I get.
No, that's going to be awesome.
There is a link to that. I'm really excited for you joining. Is that your first session?
It is. It's my first session. It's my first, I think, ever presentation in the public scene. So I haven't done one in person, haven't done one online. So super excited for it to be your one. It's going to be good. I've already done some prep.
You've got Sean and
he's awesome.
And Anna Black's presenting on the same event as well.
Love that. No, you've brought in a couple of legends of the community, I'd say. So I think it's going to be a real good event. So we'll put the link in the description and people can sign up there. I mean, Sarah, on that, I'm speaking to people. They've come to me and asked me for advice in starting out in the Power Platform, and people who are in junior roles and looking to get to mid and senior roles. And we spoke about LinkedIn and the role of community. I mean, through your experience, how much easier is it to find someone a role who is prominent in the community in comparison to someone who's a ghost? You know, is there true value in being known and having your voice heard?
That's a tricky question, actually, because if you go to a conference, there'll be stalls there from some of the partners that are trying to recruit, and they do a lot of their own outreach. So you find that a lot of the high profile people might already be talking or being approached about roles in the community. But having said that, people can be private. People don't always feel like they can approach me. I don't think I push out there that I recruit enough, really. I think sometimes it feels like asking for a favour or something. I don't know. So that there is a mix, but then those that do know me well know that I will always kind of put my professional hat on, and we can talk through what might be a good way to start looking at the next move. The unknown people, I absolutely love placing people like that. Some of my best placements you will never have heard of, you know, and that might be out of the partner world, or it might be out of end user world. And those in the end users that are really battling internally to, you know, it's sales. They're selling internally to their stakeholders, and sometimes getting listened to a lot less than a Microsoft partner. So they're fighting those battles. They're not in a team of people they can ask for help. So if they come up against a problem and they're not in the community and not aware of it or not involved, they're having to go out and watch content that people are putting out there and try and fix problems themselves. So they tend to be quite good at problem solving and communicating if they come from an end user, and often don't know how good they are. So it's quite an exciting process to go through with tech tasks and things, learning or realising, I suppose, that actually they're really good. So it makes people feel pretty awesome when they get to the end of the line. And get into a consultancy that's great, that's going to offer them mentorship and support and advice and money for exams and more opportunity to get involved with the community as well. But it doesn't have to. I don't think it doesn't necessarily reflect on your skills. It might reflect a lot more on your personality, being out there and known. You probably will get more opportunities come your way because there'll be people trying to recruit and save money on not paying a recruiter, which is fair enough. You know, if that can work out, then happy days.
And you mentioned you know, one of the benefits of obviously joining a company, which is, you know, them helping you out for the payments of certificates. And it brings an interesting point that I've been thinking about quite often, which is negotiation. You know, people always think negotiation, when you're negotiating kind of terms with an employer, they think it's always monetary, but there's plenty of things you can negotiate. So do you have any experiences with people trying to negotiate their salaries and other things, and, you know, good experiences, bad experiences, and kind of the lessons that you can take from that?
So on negotiating salary, first I'll sort of take a step back. So the first conversation that I'll have with any candidate is, what's your motivation? Why are you looking to move? And if that's just money, if it's just money, and it's usually not just money, but sometimes people think they have to just say money because they don't want to slag off their manager or something, you know, and trying to be polite. But really, I want the truth. I want to know what that motivation is. And if it is just money, I'll usually go back to your manager, go and have a conversation about that and negotiate it within your current role first, because you'll probably get a counter offer. So you might as well ask that question, save your own time and everybody else's. But usually motivation will be the technologies that they're working with, the strategy in the business might have changed, there might be no progression opportunities, they might be overworked, I'm hearing more and more of this actually, people are just on too many projects and feeling burnout. So those tend to be the motivating factors, and then salary conversation is one I will have right at the very beginning, just to be very clear. So when that candidate is going into a recruitment process, the end employer is fully aware of exactly what the salary expectations are. If that's not in budget, or it's not at the right kind of skills level, or whatever, it's clear there, we'd have that conversation then. I'll kind of stick to that right the way through the process. So if then there's an under offer comes through, before that news gets to the candidate, that's for me to negotiate why are you under offering my candidate? Where's the skills gap that you can see? Because you've interviewed on the basis that I sent them over at this amount of money. And equally, if a candidate then says, actually, I want more money, it's a no from me. I'm not negotiating at the end, because it just annoys everybody. It leaves a bitter taste, and that excitement of making an offer goes out of it. So I try and avoid negotiating on salary. It's always right at the very beginning of the process for me that those kind of guidelines are set. And then, it has to work, right? We've all got bills to pay, and if there's a client doesn't have enough budget for a particular candidate, I'll sometimes still show them, but be very clear that if you interview this candidate, you need to be able to get the extra money. So yeah, try and leave that all behind me right at the start of the process.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And how can, as a candidate, as a developer, consultant, architect, how can I place value on myself? Like, I feel like a lot of people in the Power Platform space that I've spoken to and some of the projects they're on are underpaid, that I found. And, they actually have quite a lot of skills and a lot of cool stuff that they're working on, but they don't know how much that they should value themselves. So do you think you can answer that question in how a developer, an architect can value themselves and take that to the job market?
It can be really tricky to kind of price. There's such a broad range of skills in this market that not everyone's the same, and not every hiring manager wants the same thing. So, it's hard to kind of put that blanket. If it was any other sort of tech stack, you could kind of put a line to it, I think. But here it's tricky. I think speaking to recruiters and finding out where that particular candidate has value against the clients that recruiter's working with is a way to start. Talking to each other, I think. If you are in the community, you might get people that'll open up. I know a lot of people that are really quite outspoken, that's a bit harsh, but open about what money they're on and what they're moving for. A lot of people seem to know each other's salaries, so that's one thing that you can do. But I think speaking to a recruiter in the sector that you're in, someone that's got more options for you, that's not trying to pigeonhole you into like one particular company, might be able to give you a bit of a broader view on what you'd be worth to clients. But yeah, I mean, there's sort of vague rules that I would go to, but you get because we get a lot of career switches as well, don't we? And I heard Parvez talk about this last time. So there may be some transferable skills that might come from somebody that's already in a client-facing role and trying to pick up more of the tech skills, but then they may have been a consultant in a .NET role, type software house, moving into then Power Platform consultancy. They could probably pick up the tech quite quick, but that's not a straight switch. So it can depend. But I'd always be happy to have a conversation with people and look at their skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels like a really fluffy answer, but do you understand why it's quite different?
I think I'm with you, yeah. I mean, I think the Power Platform is just so widespread, right? Like, you got Power Pages, which is so much different to Power Apps, and which is so much different to Power Automate. They've all got their individual strengths. And like you said, I think everyone coming into the industry is coming in at a different level. Like you say, there's a lot of career switches. Something that made me fall in love with the technology was the learning curve wasn't so steep. And I remember, one summer just sitting down in my room for most of the hours trying to learn JavaScript and almost pulling my hair out at the end of the sessions. I was like, I don't get this. But then I go to Power Apps and I'm like, I could just drag and drop stuff. This is much more simple. And obviously you can get quite complex with these, which is why Power Platform developers can get paid a lot, or you can get very simple with them, which is why citizen developers can be adopted at the organization. So I think I'm with you when you say it really does depend on the person's circumstance and their experiences. And you also mentioned speaking to recruiters. So I wanted to speak to you about this because I opened up my LinkedIn profile to where it says open to work, right? And I don't use LinkedIn Recruiter, so I don't know how it works. But I think if you do that, recruiters can see that you're looking for work, and they're the only ones that can see it, right? So when I did that kind of a while ago, I had a lot of messages, a lot of calls, and was getting really overwhelmed with kind of all of this opportunity, throwing figures out there and numbers I have hadn't even heard of before. So how much is too much, Sarah? How many recruiters should a candidate, a developer, a consultant keep by their side that they trust, and should they shut everyone else out? I mean, what's kind of the advice you'd give in that sense?
I mean, wouldn't it be great to have one that you trust?
Right.
One or two. And the session that I've been giving recently around preparing for your next move is to go and find that recruiter before you're open to work. So maybe 6 months before you think you might be ready for your next move. And that would be different for contract and permanent. I think if you're a contractor, you don't really need to be limiting your recruiters. Unless you've got someone who's giving you constant work, then great. I do a kind of a split of both. So my recruitment tends to be more permanent with an element of contract. But if you've got somebody who does contract all the time that's getting you work, great. But I think for permanent, you need looking after a little bit more. You need a bit more of a thorough kind of service. You need to maybe work on your CV, check out, are there any gaps? One is your CV where it needs to be, because that can be a bit of a hefty job, especially if you're working on complex projects and got lots of different technologies to talk about. We can go through like 2 or 3 or 4 iterations of that before it sort of feels like it's representing you properly. So that's a good gauge on a recruiter that's getting to know you and that knows what's best for you. I think if you get into more than a couple, and there's a few in the community that I know that are very good, so I'm not just kind of putting this on me here, but just that person that you trust is better than having, because recruiters work on commission, okay, so there's money involved, and it can become a little bit of a scrap with certain recruiters that are seeing the candidate as money, which I definitely don't work that way. But you can get someone who's more pushy, so you'll get a recruiter that'll put a lot of pressure on you. We've come through this process together, you've got to do what I say, and then you've got another one on the other side putting the same pressure on you, so you're then this pawn in the middle of 2 people trying to make a fee out of you. So if you've got one that's got a good amount of opportunities for you, you work together nice and calm, with the right motivations together, that's the dream. But yeah, if you've got a couple that you trust, and good relationships with them, I think that's probably the best way to approach it.
Yeah, definitely. And on that, I mean, have you ever built that trust with a candidate? I'm sure you have your network of people that are looking for roles, people who are very happy where they are. Have you ever placed someone and they weren't happy where they were, kind of a few months off the bat, and how did you kind of handle that?
Ooh, good question. I've not been working much lately. No, I have. There's a person that I know in Chester. It's not actually in the Power Platform space, but someone that I've placed into a couple of roles over the last 7 years. And first one was great. Went through a few years with that client. Got some great skills. Came to me when the time was right, and there was another client, sort of startup environment, seemed like an exciting role, but the client and went for that role, but then client starts running out of money and things start struggling a bit, so we went out for a coffee. I think we were together for about 2 hours in the end, just chatting for ages, but we just went for coffee, talked through everything. I was digging for where can I get this opportunity, and we just set up some interviews with some other companies that we maybe learned from that brand new startup lesson, and kind of went together down some other interview paths with other companies that we knew. So yeah, it doesn't happen often, because I like to know my clients and like to know my candidates, and I would rather do a quality job than just throw a load of people into a company and hope for the best. But when it does happen, just try and correct it, really.
Yeah, No, that's awesome. And I feel like, someone with you who has this many years in the industry understands, um, can see a good opportunity and a not so good opportunity from a mile away, I'm sure. But as you mentioned, sometimes it can run past us. And I guess on that, what are some red flags that you see in companies and in candidates? And this is just mainly for companies and candidates who are listening to this podcast to avoid them. What are some red flags or pet peeves that you look at and you're just like, I don't really feel like working with this person? Is there any?
Yeah, I think on both sides, I try and get as much detail as I can to begin with, about where's the motivation, and this works on exactly the same. Like, why do you need this person? Why are you looking for work? It's kind of the same sort of just fact finding. So if anybody is really fluffy or doesn't want to give me detail, it might be that they're a bit nervous to tell me, so I'll just then reassure and listen, it's confidential or whatever, and try and get past that. But if I can't get real honest detail out of somebody, that's definitely a red flag. That's on either side. If it's a client and it's screamingly urgent, or there's a high turnover, that's a massive red flag. If it's screamingly urgent, again, I'd want to know a little bit more about that. Why has this role not been planned in anywhere? Maybe it's something for a contractor if it is that case. But yeah, I think I'm always just looking for honesty. If I get the sense that someone's not being honest with me, that's the biggest red flag for me.
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it, how it doesn't matter what industry you take or, what jobs or anything like that. It really does come down to the bare principles: honesty, trust, responsibility, those things, the simple things. People think that, it's a hack or something they have to learn. But the truth is as long as you have your foundation right, you have your house in order, I feel like the best opportunities will come to you. And it sounds like you've had a similar experience with that as well.
Yeah, I just think people aren't often cross with you if you're honest, are they? And even if it's
Right.
difficult honesty, people are usually grateful for it. Might not be the easiest thing to have an honest conversation sometimes, and especially if you're looking, I want to go for a new role because I don't feel like I'm being valued where I am. Having that honest, open conversation with your current employer can be tricky, but it's honest, and what more can you do? So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
No, I'm with you 100%. And I guess we're speaking about turnover and candidates looking for new opportunities. We spoke very briefly about contracting, and you said it's it's not your primary responsibility, but you have placed some people in contracting roles as well. What are some of the key differences that you find kind of within the processes between permanent roles and contracting roles throughout your experience?
Yeah, I like contract recruitment. It's really quick, fast paced, and urgent. But I think, I don't. It's not my main area of business development. I've usually got a couple of contractors out running at any one time, so it's certainly something that I do and I do enjoy. But yeah, it will be that. Right, we need somebody, and it's you drop everything. If I get a contract requirement in, what day we're on, Wednesday now, I would likely have someone in place by Monday. So it's just really quick turnaround, and you've got that quick success from it as well. And I kind of work in sales, so it's quite a good, a buzzy feeling just to be busy and running through the process. Permanent is a lot calmer, a lot slower. I don't want to be panicking anybody into a permanent role, but contractors are quite up for that. Like, yeah, quick, get me in, and get that work confirmed for them for the next 6 months or whatever it is. Permanent, yeah, it tends to be, there's a lot more detail that goes into that first call, rather than maybe a 10-minute contractor call to just check on availability and skills and everything else. The culture and the personalities and things like that don't always seem to be because it's not as long term, it doesn't always seem to be as important as making a right permanent move. So a nice half an hour introduction call on Teams with a permanent candidate, really talk through, like family stuff and interests, and really getting to know that person, for me, because that is my main kind of area of that I recruit into.
Yeah.
that's a much more detailed call.
Yeah, and it seems much more personable, right, to place someone in a permanent position, because the truth is they're making more of a commitment than someone in a contracting position in regards to time and benefits and those sorts of things. I guess on that, and you've probably spoken to a lot of people within the space, and what are some of the key differences that you see in the people that are looking for permanent roles in comparison to contracting roles? Like, is there any attributes that they have a little bit different? And this question is mainly for people to gauge kind of what's right for them. If they're in a permanent role, should they be looking at contracting and vice versa? So what are some of the key attribute differences that you see in the people?
I think what I've just described in terms of my process sort of mirrors those attributes. So the contract would be like, just give me that role, and so that's why the pace of it is what it is. It's okay, just my other contract came to an end last week, I want to get the next one, and tick tick tick, the skills are there, you can do the job, you can solve that problem for the client, off you go, there's your interview. But yeah, with permanent, it's it's a slower process. I'll often get people who are looking to switch as well from permanent into contract, asking for advice. I think being set up and financially prepared to be out of work for a little bit is something that puts people off sometimes. You have to be really prepared to work a notice period in your current role. That you can't get a contract role whilst you're working your notice period. If it's a long notice period, you might be on a month or 3 months, and most contract roles won't wait for that. So It can be hard to make that switch and get the timing right. So I think just being financially ready to switch over is important, probably more than anything. But if you're quite a nervous person, or for me, I live on my own, so my bills are all my own. I can't afford to be out of work for 6 months. And so for me, it wouldn't be for me. It's not the right sort of thing. So that would be the difference. I think maybe somebody needs a little bit more stability, a bit more security in a permanent role. And it might also be the social side of it as well, wanting to kind of get into a team where you really feel a part of something, wanting to achieve a long-term goal with a team of people or with a great culture. You'd feel that as a permanent person. That's part of the recruitment process, is kind of getting that. Is that a match?
Right.
Whereas with a contractor, for the reasons that I've just said, you kind of want to just get that next role, probably not bothered about the culture or the team that you'll be working in.
Yeah,
as much at least.
Yeah, super interesting. And it's funny how you said that they kind of mirror, right? Like it's what the companies are looking for effectively is it rubs off of the candidates that they find in the end. That's super interesting. I mean, I think people that I've spoken to within the space, are really trying to make that first jump. Like you said, a lot of people are career switchers, and I know, you definitely gave me my fair share of advice when I was starting out, which, we spoke before the call, I was so appreciative of, and, how a small conversation can change a lot of things. What advice would you give to people who are looking to make that career switch, either in university and, they've found the Power Platform and they want to kind of pursue a career in that, or working current day jobs which aren't related to tech, who want to make that jump to the Power Platform? What is some advice that you'd give those people?
Yeah, and it can be tricky, actually. A lot of companies want a senior person, when they're coming out to hire. So it can be hard to get started, but there is a lot of things out there that you can do and take advantage of to set yourself stand out apart from the rest of the market. There are mentors out there and forums. If you're looking to get mentored by somebody in the community, you should probably have put a bit of effort in first. So going out and watching content, following, there's so much out there that you can follow. So kind of finding what's right for you, maybe finding whether it's, you want to go deep into Power Automate or Power Pages, or, finding the right sort of person to go and follow on YouTube or blogs to read. And engaging with that person as well, feedback, ask questions, get yourself noticed, and see if you can learn a little bit extra on top of the stuff that you're watching. I know I've heard a few debates lately about certificates, but I think certainly starting out, and certainly if you're going into perm, you need to be getting certificates, at least your sort of PL 900, but getting as far down the line as that with that as you can. And there's some great tools. AJ Safar's just put something together, like a sort of tech challenge that you can do, and it's somewhere you can really showcase your skills. So if you're building things, and with that in mind, so if you look at, say, Lewis Bayport, he was in sixth form doing work for school, building apps for his swimming club, and then he had examples to show when he went out to the market and to get work. Because this is what I've built, this is what I've done. Wow, and now look at him. So there's the things like AJ's made to help you showcase your skills if you haven't got any commercial work to do. And I'd say that for a graduate or not a graduate, somebody in school, as Lewis was, or a career switcher, just start playing with it, get hobbyist with it, get some examples together, find problems to solve in your day-to-day life, and connect with the community as well, because everybody is so lovely and wants to help, that people will empower you and help you out. So kind of find the people that you're interested in following and just maybe hit a like, send them an email. I think and again, speak to recruiters, or maybe even apply for jobs. There's junior jobs out there, often direct, to be honest, but apply to them and start getting feedback. I think interviewing is a really good way to understand what you want, where your skills are, but getting feedback, even for me, a no from a client usually is more useful than somebody saying, can I interview that person, because I learn from that feedback about where the gaps are, what am I missing. So the same goes to anybody else.
No, absolutely. And I 100% second what you say about the community as well, for people to reach out to people. Don't put them on a pedestal, don't put me on a pedestal, or yourself, send a message, and don't make the message be, hi, how are you? Because people like yourself and myself as well, not saying we're megastars or anything, but we get our fair share of LinkedIn messages, right? So if something stands out and the first few words are someone seeking advice, and it's a well thought out message, they're sure to get a reply within the community. So that would definitely be my advice, and it sounds like yours too. Is there anything else people can do to stand out, like posting regularly on LinkedIn, starting a newsletter, starting a blog? Is there anything you've seen that works, Sarah, within the space, that works on a consistent basis?
I think I had this conversation with Sean Astrakhan recently when we were talking about helping his cohort with CV and LinkedIn profiles, and I think if you're going to post, make it good quality. And I know you're posting every day at the moment, and it's good quality stuff, and that's great. If you're scratching around for things to post, then no, post once a week. If you can put a good blog together once a week or once a month, then yeah, go for it. But if you're going to put yourself out there, just try and make sure that it's the best that you can do. It would be my advice. Yeah,
absolutely. Put your best foot forward, and I'd say also on that, don't get stuck. Like, what do they say? The enemy of good is great, or does it go the other way? I think it's the enemy of good is great. I think that's the saying. So yeah, don't get stuck. Don't have a blog post sitting there for 6 months and you don't do anything. Right? Something is better than nothing, and that's always something that I say. Get started. You're gonna suck at first, and you'll get better with time, and you'll start sucking a bit less.
So. Yeah. And you can always ask for advice as well. If somebody, I'm sure if someone reached out to you and said, would you look over this blog for me? They've put the effort in, they've put some time in, and they've just sort of said, I just would like someone to just give me a little bit of feedback, or maybe,
absolutely,
that the effort is there already. I don't know anyone who wouldn't respect that and give it a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I had something else to say, I can't remember.
Hopefully it'll come back to you. I'm sure it was gold. But yeah, no, like I 100% agree with that. And like in my own time, I'll take people from my LinkedIn inbox and do one-to-one calls with them, even if it's just an hour, and give them something, whatever I can, because I struggled for a while, honestly. I release blog posts for a long time, and people weren't reading them for months, honestly. And it took me hours to put those blog posts together, and it hurt when they were out, and you see like a like, 2 likes, and it was like your girlfriend and your friend from back in high school, and you're just like, oh, okay, so no one's reading it. But with time, with enough effort, with enough dedication, with enough consistency, I think you always get your message heard.
That was the other thing I was going to say.
Yeah.
Just is managing the time that you spend on that as well. Kind of just make sure what you commit to is in line with what you can commit to.
Yes.
So if you're gonna commit to blogging every week, is that going to overwhelm you and get too much? It can get a little overwhelming. And I know some really senior people in the community that just find it too much sometimes and will just take a step back. So I think just being sensible with the cadence of the sort of content that you're going to put out is important as well. And the other thing is, to your point with blogging and wanting people to be reading them, so many people just use their own blogs as their own little reminders, don't they? So it's kind of, you come a year down the line and you go back to a blog that you wrote because it's got something in it that you've forgotten how to do.
Right.
And you can fix a problem with it. So, and even if one person reads it and gets something out of it, you've helped someone. I think that's great. So don't worry about the numbers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think good advice nowadays is don't try and go viral. Do something that would help you, and indirectly you'll be helping other people. So I think that's super, super important. Just to transition the conversation a little bit, you spoke about the job change and how, it's not moving out of the business application space, but also spanning M365. Did I hear that right as well?
The company I'm working for is M365. I'm going to stay in biz apps.
Understood.
What I know.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so within the business application space, obviously you're seeing, and I appreciate, you've been out of office for a little while, but you're seeing kind of more and more skills coming up within the job space. So what are some skills and some trends and some applications that people can start learning that you're seeing more and more of nowadays?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I think possibly something this isn't a new thing. It's the trying to get in with, get some experience in like Dataverse if you haven't already. Just trying to make sure that you've got commercial experience in all areas of the technologies that people want. And I suppose you could flip back to the question earlier about career switches and pricing a developer. How much should a senior developer be on? Well, if you're a senior developer going into a client that wants you to be working on model-driven apps, but you've not done that and you've not used Dataverse or whatever, then there might be some kind of gap there. And that's probably the most common frustration that I see within candidates trying to get more involved and get into a bigger partner or whatever. It's that their skills are sort of limited to a portion of just the nothing out there that you haven't heard of, but it might just be a version of apps or a data source. So again, just trying to get some experience, some commercial experience with that sort of stuff would help those people. But that's probably the most common gap. You could go down all sorts of lanes with this. You could talk the pro code side or different modules of Dynamics, but I think the most common thing I see is that just lack of the full range of commercial skills.
Yeah, 100%. And something practical as well that really helped me is pick up model-driven apps. Because a lot of people break into the scene and they're just doing Canvas apps, and I love Canvas apps and they can get super complex. But I feel like with model-driven apps, companies tend to lean towards those apps when it comes to the more data that they're managing, more data integrations and those sorts of things. And if you're using model-driven apps, chances are you'll indirectly get more experience with Dataverse. When you use Canvas apps, you can lean towards SharePoint, etc. So I'm a huge advocate for model-driven apps. You can also lean towards the pro code side of things. It's not too difficult to get into if you're scared of traditional software development, which is why I was putting myself through a boot camp a whole summer trying to learn JavaScript, because I was like, I don't want to be scared of this stuff anymore. But the truth is, I failed in my mission in terms of learning JavaScript end to end. But I learned the skills that allowed me to integrate that into model-driven apps. So yeah, I guess my piece of practical advice would be pick up model-driven apps to anyone listening. Okay, so I feel like we've spoken a lot about Power Platform, and we have about 15 minutes left in the podcast. And I want to speak to you about something you touched on very briefly, and it may have been a passing comment, but I definitely picked up on it, which is kind of work-life balance and how to manage that and how you manage that. You do a lot outside of work. As you've mentioned, you've been to different events, you do the roundtables, you've got community things going on. I think people really struggle with understanding how much is too much. So I guess my question is, has there ever been a point where it's been too much, and what did you do to get out of it?
Yeah, probably. So yeah, for context, I've got a 12-year-old daughter. I share 50-50 with her dad, so she takes up a little bit of time, although more just lifts these days, and wanting money. But over the years, yeah, that's been quite difficult because there's no one cooking dinner. I'm finishing work, it's kind of getting everything in the evening. And as I started doing more of the online events, maybe 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, I was doing, and people started to recognise me a bit more as maybe a way of getting into community, or just wanting career advice, but it might have been like freebie advice, and at the time I felt like I needed to do that in my own time, so I'd be doing Teams calls in the evening with people in the community rather than realising actually I can use some work time for this. I'm doing the events, and then there's a lot of messages, as you mentioned, on LinkedIn. There's a lot of to and fro, and you're trying to do that while just juggling everything at the same time. And I got to a point where it felt quite burnout. I wasn't stopping, and even my friends, I'd be kind of seeing my friends at the weekend. They're like, "What are you doing? Stop working!" Because I don't know about you, but my friends don't understand it.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So yeah, it kind of got to a point where I thought, okay, this is a bit much, and it wasn't even really doing anything. I think what I had to look at was where is the use? What am I doing that's adding any value to me or anybody else? And strip that back really, and be a bit strict on the time instead of saying yes to everybody. Is there another way I can help, or can I even help? It's quite flattering when people want to talk to you and you just new in a space where you feel like a massive imposter, because who wants to be friends with a recruiter, and there's all these clever people around, so it's kind of overwhelming, and it became probably a bit of a yes woman. So yeah, just got strict with myself, and it's something I've learned slowly over the years, because even with the VRTs, it got to a point I was doing one a week, and I wasn't looking after my guests as well as I'd like to. It was more like squeezing them in, because I wouldn't say no or put people in too much of a waiting list. It was I wanted to please everybody. So now with the new events, that's one a month, and we're doing 2 speakers on one event, because that gives more opportunity to speakers to come and get involved, but it's just one evening. And we can probably get a better audience together for that as well. So it just seemed much more efficient to do that. There are a couple of other things that I've got coming up with community collab things, and again, I'm really being quite strict with what I can manage, and if I can give myself like a Tuesday evening for community work, then great, I'm happy to do that. I know you're kind of giving yourself Sunday to do yours, and that's it then, it's okay. And if I want to go to a user group, which I love going, I go up to the Manchester user group, the UK user groups up in Manchester in March as well. I'm going to go up to Spug, which is part of the job, in January and February, I think. So it has kind of, the in-person stuff is probably getting a bit heavier now, but work can be quite flexible with that as well, because of sponsorships and things. So yeah, it's keeping a lid on how much you do and just being comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Strict with
it. Protect your time 100%. Make sure that you're spending time with your loved ones, you're taking care of yourself, you're going on a run or meditating or going to the gym in the mornings. Just have that hour and a half a day to yourself, because I don't know about you, Sarah, but there's definitely been periods in my life where, you know, you're stressed, but you don't even know it because you've been stressed so long, or, you know, you've just become in such a rhythm of having a mindset that's not good for you because of too much work or too much pressure or anxiety. And you get used to it, and that's just not a good way to be. So if you are in that position, anyone listening to this podcast, this is not by any means a mental health podcast, but take care of yourself and protect your time. I think key takeaways from Sarah.
I totally agree, and no one's ever going to be annoyed with you for that. You know, no one's going to. Nobody that I know anyway, and if they are annoyed with you, then you know you don't need to be around those sorts of people. But
Agreed.
You know, if you just take a step back, take some time for yourself, you know, with family, bills to pay, and you know, and there's a lot to think about, isn't there? I find going for a run actually really good for that, just clearing your head, give your head a little wobble. You tend to come back with a little bit more energy. But I'm so guilty of it, and I don't recognise it always in myself, but I've seen it on camera when I've been doing an event, and then I come off it and I'm like, I look absolutely shattered, you know, and I can't hide it. You can see it, and it's just that burnout. It's usually if I've not had any time off work, you know, I'll kind of not have a holiday. I try and split them quite evenly through the year so that I've got a break. But when I get ready for that break, and I see it in my daughter when it's getting ready for half term as well, she looks wired, and it is just that, right? I need to switch off.
Yeah.
You don't always recognise it in yourself. Funnily enough, my mum will tell me if she thinks I'm tired, you know, so it's usually there's an indicator there as well.
It's good you always have that, and if anyone is listening to this and of course is fortunate to have their mum around and you're feeling tired, definitely go and spend some time with her, because she will put you in check. She will 100% put you in check. At least I speak for myself. So no, that's awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you getting personal with me in these last few minutes. At the end of these sessions, I always like to roll out the red carpet, let the people know what you're up to, let them know where they can find you, and what do you have going on?
Oh, loads. Yeah, obviously there's a new job, which is great. It's been really great starting with MS Talent. The team have been lovely. Will has had me doing some bonkers video stuff, which is great to induct me.
Absolutely. And by the way, sorry to interrupt, Sarah. If you haven't checked out that video, you have to check it out. It's Will Rowe. Is it, Sarah? Is it on Will's account? Will Rowe's account. You'll find him, no problem. But you should definitely check out that video. It's hilarious.
It was a lot of fun. It was good fun getting to know everyone. I'm sure there'll be more of that at some point. Yeah, so we launched the Power Platform Community High Five user group, which is a virtual user group. It's global. We're quite keen to keep new speakers coming through, so we want to maintain 50-50. We said after the first 3 months we'd just kind of get it up and running, but then after that it's going to be 50-50 with new speakers and recognisable names, and just support that kind of newer part of the community, and keep it as diverse as possible as well. So they're the kind of main things. It's 2 45-minute sessions. I'm not fussy about what they are. They tend to be Power Platform related, but that might be softer skills, might be technical demos. So yeah, that's cool. Starting a new, I don't know what it is, if it's a podcast, it's somewhere in between, like podcast and user group with Peter Reuter. We're going to be doing just really quick fire, 10-15 minute demo, hi to the community, Power Bites, it's called, and that's something that we're launching next month. And Sophia Fricker as well from Synapse is a good friend. She is such a big personality, really keen to get more involved in the community, both working mums, and we were like, do you know what, let's do a podcast. So we're going to be doing talking to some women that inspire us in the community, some men too. It's not exclusively women, but I think it just came out of, we're not like, Arati will kill me for saying I'm not technical. We're not going to be doing any tech demos or talking too deep on the tech, but we're going to talk to some inspirational people as to slightly bonkers working mums. So
love that. Love that.
Misfits, right? Because aren't we all just we're a bit of a misfit, aren't we? I think in this community.
And just out of my curiosity, is it going to be like not a tech focus, but tech based podcast, or is it generally just to kind of have a conversation?
It's not going to be tech, no,
Right.
because I don't think we could hold our own.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
No, I think we just wanted it to be good fun. I wanted,
Yeah.
I really want to support Sophia in getting out there and really letting everybody else share her personality because she's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, there's some great women out there that are working hard and doing it with children, and there's some men doing it as well. So I don't want to just push the girls.
No, of
Um,
course.
and there are men that really enable the women around them as well. So we're open to speakers around that. We've lined up our first couple of interviews already.
Love that.
But yeah, it won't be technical. It'll be just empowerment, just about, how do we get through, keep positive, keep others positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. So
Love
yeah,
it.
busy launching lots of little things.
Very busy. Sarah's got a lot going on, and I'm sure she'll be going on plenty of runs as well. So this has been Sarah Jones. Sarah, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you guys at home, I know you got value out of this, so leave a like and go show Sarah some love. So I will leave her details in the description of this video. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. See you. Bye-bye.